All right, Yashala, giving all praises to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakah Kadash, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, double honors to the apostles, elders of great millstone, much salutation to the brothers teaching word. For the hopeful elect, soon to be elect, most high will, to the hopeful extended elect, Shalom, blessings. Getting right into it, it's, if you look up that word Judea, is written once in the scriptures in the Old Testament, and the Hebrew word is written in Ezra 5 and 8. Be it known unto the king that we went into the province of Judea to the house of the great power God, which is builded with great stones, and timber is laid in the walls, and this work goeth fast on and prospereth in their hands. You go to Judea, and I'll let the blue that'll pronounce it out.
Strong's H 3061. Yehud.
And they say, sometimes they say Yehud, which is really in Hebrew is Yahawada, which is Judah. So there's no conversion of this new Judaic system of believers, of a new religion that was, besides Judah and the rest of the tribes, and the main core tribes at that time were Judah, Benjamin, Levi. We're not these heathens. We were the southern kingdom, which consists of so-called black, the Benjamin, the Judites, which are so-called Negroes, and the Benjamites, which is Jamaicans, so-called Jamaicans, we say, and Levites, so-called Haitians. And if you get into the spirit of these tribes, you can well understand why they who they are. I pulled up a map of Paul's journeys. Let me see. And now Paul was a Benjamite, and his journeys were all through here. This is Judea, which the same as Judah, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim in the Hebrew. So this is where the home motherland of Israelites, or it was consists of so-called Black, Latino, Native Americans. And if you go into history, there was a split under King Solomon, his sons Jeroboam and Rehoboam, and even Jeroboam fled to Egypt after his Solomon's searched to have him killed or kill him, and then he said, "Well, I'm gonna wait until my father's death to return back to the homeland." But Egypt was often a refuge to our people to go to. Even the history of Moses being favored by Pharaoh during the time of Daniel, favored, so to speak, time of Nebuchadnezzar. Even Joseph. So you had a lot of well favoring of Israelites. So sometimes that would be our refuge, just like this spiritual Egypt, being nurtured and as a refuge from these other nations, because the valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh Shaphat over there in the so-called Middle East, Western Asian regions, they're always at war, and those are detrimental places, and a lot of those places are third world countries, and they're often depicted as poor. But you got Syria right in here. You know, um, Cyprus all through here. And it's a close knit regional connection between Egypt and Jerusalem and Syria. If you go into history, and I looked up a map, uh, Syria. I'll get this. Ancient Assyria. You see ancient Assyria right here, and then you see Jerusalem, Samaria became the capital. You got Egypt over here. You know, you got Babylonian over here, and then you got Persia and Media right there, system of the Persian Median Empire, a Medio Persian Empire. So you got Syria up here, Asherites with Syria. Assyria is a so-called East Indians, the Elamites. But then you have Syria over here as a regional place of the you know a regional place, and it's pretty much it became. I looked it up. What's the difference between Syria and Assyria? It says such distinctions were later inherited by the Romans who created the province of Syria, regions western of Euphrates, while Assyria represented a distinctive geographic term, geographical term related to the Syrian inhabited regions in northern, eastern Mesopotamia and southeast Anatolia. So, you know, they were kind of, so to speak, one and the same. But if you read that the northern kingdom went into the Assyrian Empire, and I forget what king, what leader they were under, but they went to Syria uh, to help them fight against Assyria, but there was no real support there. Because, a northern kingdom is part of tribes of Israel, so these nations, I would think they would not be so quick to help Israel, especially when it's concerning their own people. So, we got, and if you read about the story of Jeroboam, Rehoboam, um, which it was a controversy about the the throne being passed down to them, either one under King Solomon. Jeroboam kind of rebelled against, well, he did rebel against Rehoboam. Jeroboam consisting of the northern tribe and Rehoboam the southern tribe. So maybe this got something to do with, the Romans who they say created the province of Syria. Um, yeah. Um, so you have a people in a state in a situation all the time under these heathens and oppressors, and then you got to read the story about Jeroboam and Rehoboam, southern and northern kingdom. Rehoboam representing the southern kingdom, Jeroboam representing the northern kingdom. Um, so there were always conflicts between Israel themselves, the tribes themselves. This division, two kingdoms that is going to be back to one kingdom. Um, and you had these among the heathen. So when Paul went out and the other disciples, other apostles went out, they were going to get our people that were scattered among the heathen. We always give you those scriptures, James 1:1. It talks about Deuteronomy, you should be scattered among all nations. Thou shalt find no ease among these nations. And that's what it's been. And all the way extended to West Africa. And I looked up the West African map too. And you got, well, let me big it up right quick. One of the lands, regional lands of West Africa is Niger, which is in the scriptures. Mali, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cameroon, Nigeria, Chad, which Mali, yeah, Gambia, and all that. So I'll go to that Niger scripture right quick. Acts 13:1. Now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, and Menian, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. And I've pulled this up before, the definition of Niger, and I'll read it right quick. And it's pronounced like nigger, nigger, and in the Greek.
Strong's G 3526. Niger. Niger.
And it says black. Surname Prophet Simeon. It wasn't talking about uh and black could, like now, it could be represented as a nationality, among our people. So, like they'll call Clinton black just because he got, he does a characteristic personality of what a black person would do, play the sax, get some head from Monica Lewinsky. So that was a term, not only according to skin color, but a term that according to characteristics, mannerisms, or even the spirit of a person. So it doesn't always necessarily has the black. Even when it says Judah mourneth, they are black into the ground. Cry of Jerusalem gone up, and they say, well, that's just talking about mourning. Well, that's a characteristic of Jake, always in mourning, especially among these nations. That's always the spirit of Jake. He's the king of the blues. All his stories and his songs are about pain. So, no matter what these devils say, they can't prove that we're not the children. The salt, what do they say? The something is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. The salt is too noticeable. The spirit is too noticeable. But I'm gonna play you a little clip of the Heathens and what they're doing. It's kind of a little bit grotesque, but this is what they do. The Heathen. And she's looked like she's eating raw chicken. You can see it's kind of still bloody a little bit. And this is what Jake really. I mean, Jake really don't want to be African, man. But they'll say they from Africa. Africa's the motherland and all that. And these nations, they nasty as hell, man. These are not the children of the Most High. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough of that. So, you know, that I looked up where that was, and that's in Tanzania. And am I saying it right? Tanzania, yeah, Africa, which is East Africa, which we said our people are in West Africa. And let you know we're trying to get away from these heathens as much as possible. And we know the history, and we know what's written in the scriptures. The Most High told us to stay away from these heathens. And it was a curse to be among them. So like now, you see our people when they come over here and they join with, that come over here from Africa is most likely West Africa, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone, and and all those other places. West Africa. Um, so that's where you got the map right there, East Africa, Southeast Africa, if you will. Um, and you don't hear too much about the apostles going there. Even Yahweh Shai himself said, "Enter into Samaria in Samaria, enter ye not in any city of it," um, because they were implemented heathens in there under Shalmaneser. So and they were getting judged, you know, because a lot of them were saying that they were the children of Abraham, and they were lying. And even Yahweh Shai said to that woman, um, um, at the well, he said, "You worship where you know not," because he was talking about our father Abraham. He said, "The salvation is of the Jews." Um, so when we talk about these regional places that our people were and still are among these heathens, there's a distinct uh, definition of character, definition of of spirit that separates us from them, and to have the Holy Spirit, knowing that, seeing that in the Spirit is definitely clear as clear as holy water, man. You know, man, you see some of the, Jake in his poverty. You seen him in his poverty at his worst during the crack epidemic, during the slums and what they left for us after slavery, and it wasn't nowhere bad as how these heathens are living because we're not those kind of people, uh, and you know it was a heavy spirit on Jake, to a broken spirit on Jake, so it wasn't easy to come out of that broken spirit, especially when you have nothing. But when you start to gain stuff and start to kind of like, have housing and, have food and, you start to look better, look healthier, you start to go to school, even though it was narrated by these so-called white people are that so-called education, you still look, you start to look pretty good. And Jake, with that, got comfortable, and started really depending on the system, and nurturing themselves with the so-called white man's dainties and milk, and was fashioned after those manners. So then you have people like the black boule, and you have people like the black elites that are considered in this world more special than the average Jake. A lot of them celebrities, 99.9% of them celebrities, that are elite figures that stay in the public are black elites, like Jay-Z, you know, like Dr. Dre, like Oprah, and a lot of them other millionaire, billionaire people of our people. But, you know, uh, that's kind of, so, we fled to West Africa during the siege of Jerusalem. And, a few of us North Africa, but main core was um, West Africa. And let me get that map again. And it went by the Euphrates River, which is right here. You know, let me get that Jerusalem map. Not the Bering Strait. Here's Jerusalem right here. You know, and here's and then you had the Romans besiege Jerusalem. Then you had us fleeing to Africa, West Africa, probably as far as we can go, and then the northern. And that was, you know, basically, uh, most of the southern kingdom, you had the northern kingdom already had been over to Americas, and it tells you that in Apocrypha. But it lets you know that Egypt was a safe haven for our people to run to. Um, and that could be read in the scriptures too about the woman fleeing to a wilderness to be nourished. And then this is the spiritual Egypt where our people are now being escaped to, wanting to come to America, you know, the so-called Great Promised Land. And, back and forth during that period, especially 1492, Christopher Columbus brought Hebrew interpreters over here, and they basically, I'm pretty sure there was some kind of communication to know that, you know, what was being set up over here as he sailed to make this a great land. But of course, he had to slaughter our people, slaughter the natives over here with a lot of bloodshed. But if it's being built up and to look prosperous, our people will fall for it and come over here and want to come over here. Just like Godfrey, he's an example of a Nigerian that came over here pretty much to live a better life. He's a comedian, but Estelle, she's over here. She's making platinum records. I don't know if it went platinum, but she was an artist. Came right over here, and you know, she did a song called American Boy with Kanye West, and they might be so-called living better lives, but it comes back, bite them back because America is not so free. It's bitter, actually. That's what America mean, and uh, they realize that damn, this is, even though it's so-called better life, there's still pros and cons, and the cons eventually outweigh the pros. You know, to where you don't have no money, you're still a slave. So, but nobody's going back to West Africa. They're staying right here in America because it has its perks, you know. But what does it say in the scriptures? Find no ease among these nations. It says Deuteronomy 28 and 65. This is part of the curses listed from verse 15 on down. And among these nations, let me see what it says right before that. And it says 64, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth into the other, even from the eastern world to the western world, right here over in America, the uttermost parts. And thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thy father has known, even wood and stone. And among these nations shall not thou find no ease. You know, we're tributaries, we're slaves over here. Yeah, captive to this day, and you got to do some kind of ritual, uh, disturbing acts to be high up in this society. And Jake really don't. I mean, but the temptation is there. And if you're in one hand you have nothing, in the other hand you have $1 million. Of course, Jake, especially in his pain and suffering, he's gonna go to the $1 million. So it says, "But the Lord, and neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest." But the Lord, and that's all the slave was talking about. I need to get off my feet. I need to get enough money to get off my feet. Had no rest day and night. Picked cotton, sugar canes in the fields, cornfields, without no reparations, no money, no compensation. So it says, "And shall give thee their trembling heart, which is your mind, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind." In the heart, you can actually have a heart attack with your physical, and with your physical heart by your thoughts. So it's all connected as the body. And Jake, in every kind of way, is suffering. Poison, um, physically, mentally, spiritually. You know, but if you look at the ways of these heathens, like I did one about Elam, imitating Michael Jackson, and they get the best of us, man. Um, and they try to come for the rest of us, which is the a hopeful elect, which is the elect themselves. But that's who Paul was going after, the elect, because you have our people among these nations that rather be among these nations. They rather just chill and be. You got some that looks like Elamites, and you'll tell them like, no, you're you're a Jake, man. You're a Jake. You need to come back to the truth, man. He always been going through um, race, racism in his own family. He he don't want to eat swine. His family come against him. He similar lifestyle of an hopeful elect, and he be like, man, you got to come back to the power. And so, like I said, you got some called Afro Iranians. You know, let me pull up and I'll give it a close up. Here's one where it shows many of them. He said, "No, I'm Iranian. I'm Iranian." Like, no, our people got scattered, man, among all these nations, man. Like they got scattered. And if you go to the scriptures of when it talks about Elam in the New Testament, concerning the ministry of the apostles, it's not talking about Elamites, their particular nation. Is talking about our people that were scattered among Elam. Like I said, the East Indians, our people were captive under East India. The East Indians, the Assyrians. Let me see what this. It actually says Elamite, I think, because it mentions that one. Yeah, Acts 2 and 9, and then you can go to the whole chapter, and you could drop down. But it says, you know, I could pick up at 5. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven, Jews. Now, when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together, and they were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, all are not all these which speak Galileans? How hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we is born? And that's where you get talking in tongues. It has nothing to do with the devilish talk that's talked in church. It's talking about different tongues. And you could go back to the Tower of Babel when the language got confounded, where they wasn't able to understand each other. So no edification is there. The Holy Spirit really can't deal if it's confusion. It says Parthians and Medes and Elamites and the dwellers of Mesopotamia and Judea, Cappadocia, and Pontus and Asia. And I showed you those lands. So you can easily, when our people are dispersed and divided and start being captured of these nations, start fleeing certain ways, there's Elam, Arabia, Egypt. There's Judah right there and Jerusalem right there, regional places around there. We were captive in Babylon, Nineveh. Here's Asher right here. So you had Nineveh is I think is capital of Assyria. So yeah, our people are definitely gonna be there. And then even spreading out over time. So you had a lot of our people in these regional places. So if any of the apostles went there, they would be going to the land of Elam, the land of Arabia, and they say, well, are there any Israelites? You know, are we speaking to Israel? Just like we say now in America, we are for the elect. We're calling out for the elect, and the elect come. So there might be some elect. I mean, 2/3 among Elamites that are Jakes, that are Israelites that are not going to make it. They just decide to either follow the ways of the customs of the heathen still, or continue to call themselves Elamites, just like our people over here calling themselves Africans. So you don't worry about them. But there are hopeful elect men among these nations, among the Arabs, among the Elamites, the Egyptians, and you say, well, you know, this is for the hopeful elect, this doctrine, this ministry, this body, and they'll some come out of that, you know, and knowing and come back to who they are. And that's the same ministry of Yahweh Shai that he was teaching, you know, about the Israelite foreigners, you know. So I'll get more into this, man. I don't want to make it too long. It's already long enough. Anyway, hopefully